Evening all, appreciate your patience as we work through some things. Call to order the May 13th, 2024 edition of the Town of Garner Planning Commission. With that, we will do roll call.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll now call the roll. Gina Avent.
Here.
John Blasco. Here. Ralph Carson. Here. Philip Jefferson. Jehan Hodges.
Here.
Sherry Phillips.
Here.
Michael Voiland. 6 members present.
Thank you. Do we have a volunteer to do the invocation?
Do one.
All right, thank you.
As we gather here today, let us reflect on the spirit of May, a month symbolizing growth and renewal. May we approach our discussions with open hearts and minds, embracing the diversity of ideas and perspectives that contribute to the betterment of our community. Let us also honor the legacy of Gerald Carson, Ralph Carson's father, who dedicated nearly a decade of his life to serving on the City Council in Moncton, Canada. His commitment to public service and his contributions to his community serve as an inspiration to us all. Remembering Bob Dylan's words, "The only thing constant in life is change." Let us embrace change as an opportunity for growth and progress in our planning endeavors.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Moving on, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move. Second.
I have a motion and second.
Motion on the floor to adopt the agenda. I'll call the vote. Avent.
Aye.
Blasco.
Aye.
Carson.
Aye.
Hodges.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Voiland.
Aye.
The minutes are adopted.
Adoption of the agenda.
I'm sorry, agenda.
Moving on for the minutes, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
If all are comfortable with it, I will abstain from this vote since I was not in attendance at the last meeting.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the presented minutes. I'll call the vote. Avent.
Aye.
Carson.
Aye.
Hodges.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Voiland.
I'll abstain. I was not here for the last meeting.
Right. With 4 ayes, the minutes are adopted.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our old and new business. Just a reminder to those in attendance, this is not a scheduled public hearing. However, this meeting is open to the public so that the public may obtain information about items on our agenda this evening. Our typical process for running our meetings, we'll have a staff overview of the project. Often we'll have a presentation by the applicant. Then we will listen to those who may be in favor, those who may be opposed to the project, followed by questions from the commission of the applicant and of staff, and then ultimately some commentary and a vote by the commission. Typically, we like to give the public 10 minutes on either side to speak. We ask that you not be repetitive in your comments. We will do things a little differently tonight as we get into a couple of cases that are going to be ultimately pushed till the June meeting, but we'll talk about those when we get to them. So starting off, we have CZ MP 2302, Wall Store Road.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission members. Your first case for tonight is CZMP 2302 Wall Store Road. The applicant for this case is Capital Partners of NC LLC. The request overall is for a Tier 2 conditional rezoning submitted by them for this just shy of 9-acre site to rezone from rural agricultural and MFB conditional to a new multi-family B conditional district for the development of a maximum of 60 townhouses. We are just north of Auburn Village, adjacent to Wall Store Road, and just west of Rock Quarry. The existing or the approved Burnett Farms subdivision is on this parcel right here. Auburn Village is over here. Just a reminder that our rural agricultural zone is primarily meant for that. Rural type uses that you will find typically around the county in the fringes. Multifamily B is a more dense urban style district, or at least suburban. But there is currently a mix of R4, R2, and RA surrounding the site. Also some Wake County R30 to the north. Water and sewer are readily available, though, in this area due to the development that has been happening. And in addition to fronting on Wall Store Road, there is a new collector street being constructed with the Burnett Farms subdivision that will connect through from Auburn-Knightdale Road to Wall Store Road as part of this project. Turning to our still fairly new off the presses Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan, we see here the site in relationship to the framework map. The yellow is a neighborhood activity center. The brown is a community activity center. So you're just on the edge, fringes of those areas. You do have several major roads, Auburn, Knightdale, and Rock Quarry being two of those. Wall Store currently is pretty much a country road, but eventually will also upgrade very similar probably to Auburn, Knightdale in terms of what its ultimate cross-section looks like in the future. Both roadways, Auburn, Knightdale, and Rock Quarry, do have some capacity for growth. They are being upgraded, of course, as development is approved. And as that growth occurs, we are ensuring that there is installed separate pedestrian and cycle facilities so that folks don't all have to share the roadway travel lanes. Wall Store Road, though, is, as I said, a rural secondary DOT route connecting Auburn Church to Rock Quarry. Again, this roadway certainly does have capacity for growth, but currently there hasn't been much development along it, so it does still lack any separated infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. This area is going to be heavily influenced, though, by the completion of 540, which is just to the east. Current estimates of completion up to Knightdale will be in 2028, 2029, and there will be an interchange here at Rock Quarry Road. In terms of the proposal, the applicant has narrowed down 2 of the 18 possible uses for the MFB district. The district does call for structures that are more urban in character and located closer to the street than in the MFA district, with parking generally in the rear. Multifamily developments here are generally clustered around active areas and allow people to live closer to places that they work and play. And some non-residential or mixed-use structures are also expected to occur in places. So certainly this is a district that near an activity center, you're going to be expecting something a little more dense and urban style than suburban. We've listed some of the other conditions related to some of the amenities and aesthetics for the site. I will note that it was clarified during the public hearing process that this proposal for these townhomes, they will be incorporated into the HOA for Burnett Farms, so they will have a shared overall amenity package. So we are encouraging you not to just look at this on its own, but also in light of the larger Burnett Farms subdivision approval for the townhomes and apartments there. They do have guest parking as well as their own mail kiosk, though, planned as required by the Postal Service. The Greenway extension that was approved through Burnett Farms will carry through this site, have a connection internally, and stub out towards Auburn Village. Unfortunately, though, the way this creek travels, there will be a little missing gap along this adjacent parcel in the short term. Auburn Village does have their own greenway that stubs out to the north. It is currently constructed as a private greenway, but it does sit within a public easement and can be upgraded at such time that it makes good sense to do that. I will note that the townhomes do front on the major roadways here, both on Wall Store, the extended collector, as well as this collector here, and the main street traveling through. These are alleys here, so it is an alley-loaded product for parking purposes. Again, just to give you a little bit of context, here is the Burnett Farms plan and the Wall Store Road plan shown together. Again, the greenway traveling through this area here with connections into both parts of the community. At Council's request, we are also providing you with some information on what is happening in Raleigh, since this is an area where our jurisdictions come together. So here you see our typology map from our comprehensive plan here in the purple and the orange, the purple being a mixed use area, the orange being the neighborhood area. In Raleigh's long-range plan, they have a few more actual land use designations. So what you're seeing here in the red is a commercial mixed use. The blue is an office and residential mixed use. And then everything else that you see in yellow and the lighter shades is going to be some form of residential. There was, if you look at the area of this, what they have designated in red, it is about 110 acres. However, you will notice that of the projects that they have currently in review, either in review or approved, we have 228 townhomes, which comprises this aqua and this part of the red area. It parcels off this piece up front. Over here to the west of Rock Quarry, we have, I forget the name, Blue Jack. I was going to say Applejack, but Blue Jack Falls. This is a proposal for 823 single-family dwelling, detached, and townhomes. Again, it takes up a vast majority of this combined site here, but they did reserve some area right up in here along, again, Rock Quarry for some non-residential development. But just because you're seeing red here doesn't mean that that is turning into commercial development. Parts of it are, but some of this is actually developing as townhomes and single family. And then there's another piece right here off of Wall Store Road, again, that has 47 townhomes in review. So overall, it looks like they probably have a net remainder of about 50 acres on which some of the non-residential could be supported. So I would consider this to be kind of their version of an activity center at Rock Quarry and Whitfield. And then, of course, we have our designations for an activity center down near Rock Quarry and Auburn-Knightdale. They're about 3/4 of a mile apart. So I think there was some concern that maybe one might overwhelm the other, or one might become more commercial and one might become more residential. I would say that just off the cuff that it seems to be about the same either way. What Raleigh is seeing is not considerably different than what we are as well. So turning to the actual master plan data, again, the site is just under 9 acres. They do have to have just shy of an acre of an open space with this part, of which 25% must be active. This needs to be formalized no later than the major subdivision plan approval, either individually or as part of the Burnett Farms, which we now know it's being added to that for HOA and management purposes going forward. And as usual, it's a combination of conservation and recreation space to satisfy the open space requirements. In this part of Garner, we're not in a watershed protection area, so this doesn't drain to Lake Benson, but the area is still subject to our quality and quantity requirements. As you noticed in the draft plan, they do have a surface pond that they are looking at for stormwater control. Connections to utilities there will come from a new water main in Burnett Farms, as well as connection to the 8-inch outfall being extended from Auburn Village. In terms of transportation, it will generate, expected to generate 407 new one-way, 407 trips in the morning, 6 going in and 20 out, and PM 19 in and 13 out in the hour. This TIA that they did was pretty much an amendment to what had been submitted for Burnett Farms and was completed in February of last year. As I noted before, the project would complete a new collector that's going through Burnett Farms from Auburn-Knightdale up to Wall Store. NCDO's congestion management unit did not have any comments for off-site improvements. In terms of environmental and cultural resources, there were not any cultural resources identified, but there certainly was the existing stream along the southern end of the site and the existing pond, which is proposed to remain. Those southern areas are primarily the target for the tree preservation and pedestrian trails, including that segment of public greenway. In terms of neighborhood review, there were 126 properties and occupants notified in the area. The first meeting was held on June 1st of last year and the second one on September 7th. You see there that they had 28 attendees at the first meeting and 11 at the second, and we've given you again the full details of that attached to your staff report. And this was heard in front of the council at a public hearing on March 5th. You see the comments and concerns and the items that were discussed from the council there. I think we've touched on some of those, but if there's any of those that you have further questions about, I'll be happy to chime in as I can. So in terms of the staff review, when looking at the framework, we noted that the site is not within an activity center, although it is very close. It falls within the mixed-use character typology, and it is identified as part of a level 4A area to transform. So we're looking for low-rise development, which typically will fall on average in the 3 to 5 story realm. In terms of looking at the framework consistency, we looked at 13 criteria, and you see the split there as to how we found them. The one that was a strong inconsistency was the lack of a playground open space feature. In terms of the land use and community character portion of the consistency review, we identified 27 criteria with a slight lean towards consistency. But some of the things that they could do and would be good for you all to consider is whether or not street frontages could be enhanced any further than they already are. It is a little bit of an anomaly here because we're essentially reviewing a project that's going to almost become a phase of another project. And the plan calls for more of a central focal point for the neighborhood. Certainly when you look at this on its own, it kind of is missing that. But when you're looking at it in the larger context, perhaps not. And then considering whether they might proffer any additional conditions or clarify some of the existing ones that may speak more directly to some of the things that are in the plan. You will see there are a number of here that were split or really couldn't be evaluated one way or the other. So there might be some room to move the pendulum there. But overall, we did feel like that staff can support an overall finding of consistency. And the full detail, of course, again, is in your staff report if you have any questions on how those items were scored. So we have drafted a consistency statement for you to consider tonight. That we, the Planning Commission, would find that in the absence of any strong non-supporting comprehensive plan criteria and a modest level of consistency with the plan's growth framework, that perhaps the request then could be considered consistent with the town's adopted land use plans. I would definitely encourage you to ask any questions that you have about those. With a highlighted option, perhaps define consistent and recommend approval, and a draft recommended motion as well when you get to that point. The applicant is here though and is prepared to offer some testimony and information to you, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff before we get to the applicant? Or do you want to move right on? All right.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Beth Blackman with Simmons Group, and I do have a presentation, but 5410 Trinity Road, Suite 102 in Raleigh. Do I have a clicker, or do you want to? It's only a couple
I'll
slides.
advance it for you.
Okay, it's only a few. So you can go ahead. Let's move on. So like Jeff said, the property is currently zoned R2 and very close to the Neighborhood Activity Center on the comprehensive plan. So in developing our plan, we did consider the Garner Ford plan as well as existing development that's in the area. Auburn Village is an age-restricted neighborhood with both attached and detached single-family homes. So even though we don't connect to it, we do abut it, and we wanted to be cognizant of that and careful with our planning. So this is an extension. This is continuing what Burnett Farms started by finishing out the Collector Street all the way to Wall Store Road. HOA would be shared. Amenities would be shared, and continuing the public greenway with another additional about 400 feet of greenway. So at least it would be a good segment between the two properties of public greenway. The site is less than 9 acres, so that does present some challenges. We have an existing pond, stream that has a noose buffer. So we have to be a little more compact with our development and ensure that we can get the density needed to make the project and the road improvements work, because we also have to improve Wall Store Road to a major collector street, so our half of the 75-foot right-of-way with sidewalk, curb and gutter on our side. And so with our existing environmental features and the proposed greenway, we did push most of the development towards Wall Store Road. So we're utilizing the area where there's that existing pond and our proposed stormwater for a open play lawn area with that private trail connection to the greenway. But all the units are rear loaded, so everything would have a really nice streetscape. And one thing about the kind of thinking about how the transition, so if you think about the intersection of Rock Quarry and Auburn Village, that would be Auburn Knightdale Road. That would be, a more intense area. Then you go to the apartments that were approved for Burnett Farms, and then the townhomes for Burnett Farms, and then you continue that out so we can make a transition out from those activity centers, but still be a little more dense, but in keeping with the surrounding area as well. We did propose some additional conditions, the enhanced streetscape along Wall Store Road, and additional screening at the end of the alleys that sort of stop before you get to that minor collector street. My next slide was just a repeat. Oh, I did kind of show the two projects together and how it would continue out with the collector street. Jeff had a map that was everything all together. And then this is a repeat of the kind of Raleigh and Garner land use plans. And so with the calculations about the reduction of commercial area in the Raleigh section, I do think one of the concerns from council was about the Raleigh getting all the commercial and Garner not getting anything but the residential. So if their commercial is getting shrunk, right, and they're getting more residential, what's left, I think, will be commercial on their side, but sort of the same on our side as well. So the stuff closer to the intersection in both of those cases are more prime for commercial development. And obviously, same thing they're seeing there. As you get further away from Rock Quarry Road, it's more residential. And then my last slide should just be, a wrap up of the TIA, which was not required by the NCDOT, but was completed per Town of Garner request. Did not find any improvements. There is capacity in Wall Store Road, and we'll have two side accesses the collector road, which go all the way through Burnett Farms to Auburn Knightdale Road, and then a right in, right out on Wall Store a little bit further down. Our traffic engineer is here if you have any questions. So Mr. Hokenadel is here. And Mike Nedriga, the project developer, is here as well. And so I know any of us are available if you have questions.
Thank you very much. I have one question, and just for my clarification, I'll let the commission ask some questions. Could you just clarify the collector road to the east, what your responsibility is?
That actually would be fully built because it is a 2-lane median divided. So it is split along the property line, but there's only going to be 2 permanent lanes, right? So it all would be built. Don't know that we discussed sidewalk on the other side, but or street trees on the other side, but at least our side would have sidewalk and street trees.
So you'd have sidewalk, street trees, lane, median, lane, and then whatever is decided upon
Right.
after that.
Engineering can figure that, will tell us exactly what they want there.
Okay, thank you. Questions from commission?
I've got a couple questions. Just looking at I'm looking at page 7, I guess, of the plan, just an overall layout of that property. That one right, just go back one there. Okay, so on Plan North, you have an alleyway or something. Is that going to connect to Plan West at some point, and the same with the one below it, or is it just that major street on the south end?
So we're only showing the major street connecting, and that would have a temporary turnaround. The alley is not shown as connecting, partially because we have a perimeter buffer that's pretty significant, 45 feet if I'm remembering correctly. That actually is not anything we've discussed or come up previously. So it's not drawn showing it to be connecting. I would think if a project came into the west while this was in subdivision review, then that would be an easy conversation to have. But that area is perimeter buffer right now, so we were not breaking through it.
Okay, on the access points along Wall Store Road, is there any deceleration lanes, turning lanes or anything, or is it just straight on and off Wall Road? I don't see anything drawn on there. That's
Yeah,
what I'm asking.
it's straight on and off. No, the one to the west, which this is north up, so the one to the west is a right in, right out, because they're too close together for it to be a full access. But the collector street would be a full access, but there is no turn lanes required.
So even with the traffic study showing 407 vehicles traveling in and out of there, the traffic engineer, the traffic study doesn't show that is advisable?
It does not, and I have a feeling the ADT of Wall Store Road doesn't require it. Sometimes that happens by default. Yeah, you can answer.
Jeff O'Connell, 5410 Trinity Road, Suite 102, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27607. I did the traffic study for the Wall Store project. To answer your question, the ADT along, or the AADT along Wall Store Road is 1,100 vehicles per day. When it hits 4,000, NCDOT starts looking for turn lanes into and out of the onto and off of the road. So right now, it's not projected to get close to that 4,000 mark. So we didn't make any recommendations, or we didn't offer up any turn lanes off that road.
But it looks like you're backing up very close to the edge of the existing road in that 75-foot public right-of-way. With all the development that's going on out there and the likelihood that Wall Road is going to be upgraded at some point, I think Mr. Triesenberg had mentioned that, it doesn't look like there's any plan to have room to do any kind of turn lanes unless they take it all on the north side of the road. But it doesn't look like there's some planning here to account for future expansion of Wall Store Road.
So we're proposing the 75-foot major collector, which is a 3-lane section. So there would be that center turn lane comes in by default. So when the north side develops, there would be the extra full lane, right? So when we do our half, there wouldn't be a full lane extra. But when the north side develops, there would be a full extra lane. So the left turn lane comes in by default at that point. Now, I don't know what Raleigh plans for that road, because the other side would be Raleigh. But hopefully it's something very similar. And so the full section would be built out one day.
So this is connecting to the future Burnett Farms subdivision.
Correct.
Have you accounted for traffic coming out of there, trying to exit onto Wall Store Road? I mean, the 407 in the traffic study, that was just generated from this project, not the adjacent one, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we did account for it in the traffic study. We don't anticipate a lot of traffic using that. I mean, we see more of it heading towards the south and heading potentially to the east and to the west, and then particularly heading from Burnett Farms anyway, heading south, heading more towards 540 at some point when that road is developed. But right now it seems to be heading more to the south, or heading south and then heading towards the west. It's kind of how the trips are generated. But yeah, I don't see, there's not a lot of traffic projected to come north up onto Wall Store Road. You've got unsignalized intersections. It's just not going to travel in that direction, most likely. I'm not saying nobody will, but it's going to be light.
So you have accounted for traffic coming
Yeah.
out of there, or you
We have.
have not?
We
So
did.
How many vehicles are you projecting to come out of Burnett Farms Road?
Right now, we've got projected to come up the Collector Street. Actually, all total, it's about basically, coming through that road it's basically 6 in the morning and 7 in the afternoon. It's not a lot of projected peak hour trips.
Just the last question. I think I read here where the owners of the property to the west had attended one of the meetings. Is there any overall plan for all of these different parcels, or are they just going to kind of piecemeal this going down Wall Store Road? Is there an overall meeting of the minds of how this is all going to come together?
No, so the property owner to the west lives on one of those parcels. He owns quite a few parcels that are not all with his house, right? But he does live there, so he is not interested in selling. In our conversations, I think he's came to all of our neighborhood meetings, actually. But he was interested to see how it was going to play out, right? But there has not been any development master plan for the whole area. But when he does decide to sell, he would have a connection to Auburn Village and this stub street, as well as significant frontage on Wall Store Road.
Okay, thank you.
Else?
Yeah. The existing pond will remain, correct?
And that is the intention, yes. There's really no benefit to draining it.
Okay, and so I presume it was not considered as serving for stormwater control.
So we don't usually use existing ponds because you can't meet quality out of an existing pond. So that's why we have a pond beside a pond. It would be nice if that is something we could do, but without putting a new riser structure and rebuilding a dam, it's pretty much impossible.
Well, at the same time, I'll presume that you were trying to make that natural area as natural as possible, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Phillips, any comments, questions? Is that-
I have 2 questions. I was reading through the comments from the meetings that you had with the neighborhood. And so one of the questions had to do with the existing greenway, and you had said that it would connect, but in this answer, it said that the public greenway in Auburn Village is further to the west, adjacent to Wall's property, and there's an existing private trail in Auburn Village that will not connect.
So with Burnett Farms as well, that was a big conversation. When we started Burnett Farms, which we handled the rezoning for that as well, the greenway in Auburn Village we were told to connect to, and I do believe it's Stubbs, but that is not a public greenway. So we removed the greenway connection at that location and shifted it up more towards the creek on Burnett Farms. So then it would follow the creek onto this property. So then this would be the extension of the public greenway, but because we don't touch where the public greenway easement actually stubs in Auburn Village, Jeff, if you go back to the one that has like the Auburn Village map on it, I think you can see it sort of. So there would be that gap that Jeff referenced.
So
right there.
the public stub is here, and then they do have some private trails that continue to meander through here.
So is there something blocking?
Yeah, it's Mr. Wall's property is in between. So in that wooded area, right? So that piece needs to develop to make that last little connection.
That's not occurring.
Not with this project, no.
And my other question had to do with trees. Do we protect trees? The response was the UDO requires 18% tree preservation, but we have a lot of farmland and don't have a lot of trees to begin with, so we'll have to plant more trees. So
Correct. We are intending to preserve the trees that we do have, right, that are at the back and around the pond and the stream. But the rest of it is a field.
Yep.
And where the perimeter buffer goes in to the west is a field. So we're not going to be using existing vegetation to help us with that. So there is going to obviously have to be planting just because of the site conditions today.
And so in the current plan, I mean, I see it looks like some trees planted. Is that what you're referring to? Or
Yes,
are there
yes.
some more?
Yeah, we have to have street trees, which count towards tree preservation. We'll have landscaping trees, perimeter buffer trees. So the intention would be obviously to plant to meet our requirements in the UDO for street trees and perimeter buffers. And then if we need extra to meet our percentages of tree preservation, then we'll do that as well. Though that level of detail has not been calculated out, so I can't tell you. I would venture that the existing that we do have and the perimeter buffers and the street trees will be enough, but I haven't done those calculations at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess it's my turn. So, I think I got most of my questions answered. As far as the townhomes, are there any proposed elevations for them yet, or are they still up in the air?
There are not. They will be rear loaded. They have the same conditions as the Burnett Farms townhomes. So it'd be a good continuation of what was being proposed there. I'm pretty sure Burnett Farms came about when we had really seen an uptick in zoning conditions for architectural requirements. But we don't have elevations at the time. The developer is still talking with builders. But obviously we wanted to continue from one neighborhood to the next.
One thing I would like to see is 12-inch overhangs or eaves. The more we can get, the better. I know Mr. Jefferson would probably request even more, but and then also I do have a concern with the garages and their sizes. I appreciate that they have garages, but I'm concerned that a 12 by 20 really doesn't leave room for a car, or it leaves room for a car and that's about it. By the time you put shelves in there or, a refrigerator or your lawnmower, then the car's outside. And I think that kind of gets away from what the garages are intended for. Maybe not as much of a concern being rear loaded, but I think maybe this is more of a commentary to staff that we need to be pushing for a little bit larger garages. They've gotten to the point now where they're glorified storage sheds and our cars are outside. So that's a overall bigger picture, not just a specific, but.
Right, and the 12 by 20 is a zoning condition because that is larger than the typical, to ensure that there is space for the rollout containers and a car. But yes, usually rollout containers and a car. So.
So anything we can do to get bigger garages, at least a couple feet, typical parking spaces, 9 by 18, 10 by 20. So it's
right. And I do not know, but I do know that some alley-fed product sometimes is two-car garage as well, which would give you extra space, in a wider driveway. But because I do not have a builder did not do this project right, I can't say that for sure, but that does happen quite often when we have alley-loaded product.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of the alley loaded, I do appreciate that. I think that creates a much better pedestrian network, keeping the cars, especially in the townhome situation when you're not all driveways with a little bit of in between. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and we did that for all units regardless of you know, the building grouping. So all units are going to be reloaded, because we agree, we like that streetscape look of it.
A couple maybe just more comments. Things I would like to wish I would see more so in this plan, just because this is a level 4 area to transform. I think the imperative in the book is that we elevate our game a little bit. So I appreciate the little bit of extra understory trees along Wall Store Road. I'd like to see that continued on the collector to the east. And even to the south, let this kind of stand out a little bit more. So I think anything we can do to enhance our landscaping and make this pop a little bit more. Has there been any thought to any sort of alternative stormwater infrastructure, green infrastructure, that sort of thing?
There has not. This, with the master plan rezoning style, we figure sort of what we have to make sure we have, what we've accounted for. So we wanted to make sure we accounted for stormwater, but we have not looked at any of our actual design. And sometimes, it's tricky to meet both quality and quantity requirements with different infrastructure. So the default usually is a wet pond, right? So at this time, that is all I have. Obviously, we can look at it when we get into design, but we have not designed it fully out, so.
Yeah, I think anything, especially along the roadsides and the medians and the space between the curb and gutter and the sidewalk, I think offer opportunities for some collection. And again, it may not be the sole treatment method, but a combination with the more traditional, maybe that SEM gets a little smaller and you get some nice opportunities for some green infrastructure. I think, again, this project, but also bigger, I think, especially these areas to transform, we should be looking at those sort of bigger and better ideas.
Right. That is something, and when I've read the comp plan, one of the things I sort of had questions about, because if we put it between the curb and the sidewalk, then it's in the public right of way. And who's going to maintain that?
Sure. Always a question. But it's been done many places. It just needs to be worked out into how that gets implemented. So definitely a valid point. I think that was, and I think my only other thing is, I think going back to Mr. Carson's comments, was just not overly concerned with this particular development, more concerned with how does this fit into the bigger picture, and just that overall concern of being piecemealed, 9-acre properties at a time, and next thing you know, it's all residential and not quite meeting our goals. So that's just a bigger concern that maybe is more geared towards staff to make sure we're always keeping that eye on that goal. All right, I think that's all I had for now. Any follow-up comments or questions for staff or for the applicant?
I do. For Jeff, these are not questions as much as they are comments. I mentioned to Ralph coming in that I was very confused by this proposal, and within the first 5 minutes of your presentation, you had answered my questions. But that, I still found what we received to be a little bit confusing. I didn't understand the linkage between this and Burnett Farms. And so a lot of the wording in the staff, in the paperwork we got, almost seemed like Burnett Farms was either in existence or way into the future. So it's hard for me to follow the connection. Case in point, it says clearly that there are 2 access points. But trying to find the other access point, the one not off of Wall Road, it's all grayed out in the material and the graphics that we received. So it was very, very hard for me to follow that. The other point was that in what we received about what Raleigh is doing, it mentioned greater development on Whitfield Road. And yet what we received did not have Whitfield Road on that map. If I knew the area better, I would know where Whitfield Road was, but I finally I went on Google and found it. So my confusion was mainly in terms of what we had received on paper. That's just the point I'm making.
I will say, just for one point of clarification, the developers are different for these two projects. And so they were started at different times with different developers. And so Mr. Bamford, several years ago, actually connected them so that they could work together. But it has always been a separate project, but then it sort of evolved into a extension of. So.
Yeah, I think having this graphic that's on the screen, if this were in our packet, this would have been extra helpful. But yeah.
And one more thing, there's no doubt that the cul-de-sac at the end of Desert Sand in Auburn Village is remaining a terminal cul-de-sac, correct? Shall I repeat that?
Please.
The cul-de-sac at the end of Desert Sand Lane in Auburn Village is remaining that is a terminal cul-de-sac.
It's the one that goes north below our pond, our existing pond.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it dead ends into the creek.
It was never meant to be a stub or anything
No.
like that. Okay.
All right, any other follow-up questions, comments? All right, hearing none. Appreciate it, Ms. Blackman.
Thank you.
And if there's anyone in attendance who'd like to speak in favor of this project, now is your moment. If there's anyone in attendance who would like to speak in opposition of this project, now is your moment. All right. Seeing none, we will bring it back to the commission for either further discussion or a motion. We have a motion so we can discuss.
I will move that the Planning Commission accept the consistency statement drafted herein as our own written recommendation regarding the consistency of the request with the town's adopted land use plans and recommend approval of case number CZMP 23002 to the town council.
We have a second?
I second.
If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Voiland, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that. With the approval based, I think, again, adding a little bit more enhanced landscaping along the major frontages of the site, being the eastern collector road and the southern collector road, to match what's being proposed along Wall Store Road. Would be my friendly amendment, if so accepted.
Fine with me.
I have one discussion comment, and this is, I think, more so for staff than anything else before we get there. I think, again, going back to some of our concerns about the piecemealing of things, and I think, to me, this residential makes sense, but I think we just got to keep our eye really on the Rock Quarry Road corridor and the Auburn-Knightdale intersection. And there's a lot of property there that I think that whole corridor, even if it's 3/4 of a mile from the Raleighs, that whole corridor could easily be a commercial active center. This is far enough back, it seems to make sense as residential in my mind. But I feel like there's a lot of opportunity that we let this bleed much further to the east. I think we lose an opportunity. So just my comments for that. I also make one more comment. I did agree with staff's suggestion, we'll call it that, not so much a condition, that if there's an opportunity to increase a little bit of the outdoor activity space near the parking lot, or whether it's an open play field, another playground or something, just to help really anchor that small group, because while it's part of a bigger development, it's not as easily to get to it's probably more than a 5-minute walk. So just something I think we should consider as we move forward. But any other follow-up commentary? None, I think we're ready for a vote.
Yeah, so there's the motion on the floor to recommend approval and your amendment regarding enhanced landscaping in connection to the Burnett Farms with the Collector Road. So with that on the floor, I'll call the vote. Gina Avent.
Aye.
John Blasco.
Aye.
Ralph Carson.
Aye.
Jehan Hodges.
Aye.
Sherry Phillips. Michael Voyland.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next case, I will pause for a moment and for the next 2 cases, the Wilmington Place and Creech Road, it's been requested that these cases be continued to the June meeting for further review. That said, we will be happy to hear staff's presentation. We will leave it up to the applicant if they want to stick around and present or not. And then we will hold public comment until our June meeting when we have further opportunity to review these cases and discuss internally and then come back for a much bigger discussion. Tonight's really more just for us to get a quick introduction. So moving on is CZ SB 2009 Wilmington Place.
Alrighty, so we have these 2 cases off of the Creech Road corridor. And the first one that we will highlight for you tonight is CZ SB 2009. As you can see, 2020, that's a fairly old number at this point. But this proposal has been brought forth by Site Investments, LLC, and it is a conditional rezoning request for just under 40 acres. Part of it is currently zoned R9. The other part is the multi-residential district. You've probably never heard of multi-residential before. That is a zoning district that was in active use several UDOs ago. But that was actually the district that enabled Hunter's Mark to be developed back in the day, where Mr. Carson lives. And this, at that time, was actually envisioned, the parcel over here to the eastern side, was envisioned to be a future phase of Hunter's Mark, but that never happened. So altogether, both parcels, the R9 parcel and the MR1, are being proposed to be rezoned to MF1 conditional, which would be adopted as MFA if approved. So today, and of course this was back when the application was filed, since then we have rezoned per our new UDO. So both the R9 and the MR1 were transferred to R4. So it is consistently one district now generally. Both lots are vacant. And so again, just to reiterate, this was a pre-160D UDO submittal back in 2020. But you do have a large R2, R4, all of those types of districts, a little bit of RA across the way right now. And a little bit of MFA further down, and a little spot of it here along Creech. And of course, the Tryon Station Apartments up here is now MFB. But water and sewer are readily available through various projects in the area. And it does front on Creech Road here, and it does sit along the Wilmington Road extension, which would come through here and would be responsible for building a portion of that. So again, when we look at the framework and the activity centers, you see the neighborhood activity center here, which is approximately where the Tryon Station Apartments are under construction. And you do have the regional employment activity center further down that incorporates Amazon and some of the industrial across from there to the southeast. So Creech Road is one of your collectors, and Wilmington would be another collector. Wilmington would actually be the collector tying these two activity centers together, whereas Creech Road would connect this activity center with the downtown activity center. Again, Creech Road does have some capacity to accommodate more growth, but it does lack a lot of separated infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. There is some, particularly around the elementary school and some of the individual homes that have been built along Creech Road. They've all been required to build their portion of sidewalk, but it's very fragmented and disconnected. For the multifamily 1 district, again, would be adopted as MFA. The applicant did narrow it from 21 possible uses down to 3. The district is primarily used to create and maintain a slightly higher density residential neighborhood with some special uses that would be supportive and non-residential. But the focus is really to ensure that when you apply this district, that it's carefully located and achieves a satisfactory relationship with what exists around it today. So again, other conditions were proposed in terms of amenities and aesthetics, and those are listed there. You will see there various things related to the buildings themselves, as well as some more things related to form, the public greenway portion that would be built, as well as some of the open areas for play. So you have the overall plan here, and again, I'll just highlight this would be the new Wilmington Road corridor here. There is a major creek crossing that does have to take place between the northern end of Hunter's Mark and the southern portion of this property. So this project, of course, cannot build it all the way across the creek because they don't own that property over there. But it would build the portion that they can and do a fee in lieu for their half of the remainder to get across the creek. So over here on the eastern side, proposing townhomes. There is a kind of a back connection here into Gatewood. Mostly will be just there for convenience and ease of access for emergency services and delivery services. It's definitely not a cut through to anywhere. And then you see over here we have for I think Garner's purposes, we would consider this a fairly new product. This will be a row house style product. What we call it a zero lot line. So the houses are pushed to one side, so you get all of your side yard to one side. May or may not have garages, some of them. But what you see here is a proposal to eventually realign Creech Road. So where I'm tracing right now, this part would go away. So Creech Road would come up this direction and tee into Wilmington Road, and eventually folks would make a left or a right to proceed along Wilmington in either direction. One of the things that was discussed at the council meeting was this house right here intervening and possible negotiations that could be taking place with that homeowner to potentially purchase that property to allow this connection to be made now so that Creech Road can be realigned now. Without that, this is the best we could possibly do. So again, just under 40 acres total, 61 townhouses, 55 of the zero lot line homes. 9.9 acres of open space required. They certainly have a lot of floodplain and natural areas that will readily contribute to that. But again, it is a combination of conservation and recreation space. Again, we're north of the railroad tracks, so we're not in the Lake Benson watershed protection area. This project is proposing 3 surface stormwater control measures and connecting to the 12-inch water line in Creech Road and the 18-inch outfall. This creek that runs through here is called Little Arm Branch. It is one of the one of the tributaries of Big Branch, which then feeds further over into the Neuse River. This project was just below our threshold for a TIA, so one was not required. However, as you can imagine, with Wilmington being a future DOT-maintained road and Creech Road being an existing DOT-maintained road, there have been significant conversations between our engineering department and NCDOT on this road coordination. There, of course, though, are still 2 required access points no matter what. They do have one from Creech and one from Plaza Drive in Gatewood. And as I mentioned before, the applicant is responsible to pay a fee in lieu for half of the future Wilmington Road crossing of Little Arm Branch. Of course, back when Hunter's Mark was developed, we did not have that language in place, so we don't have funding identified for the other half of that crossing at this point. And so for that to actually happen in the future, the town will need to find a funding source and possibly work with DOT and our friends at Campo to make that happen, or some other cooperative effort. So here again, you see Little Arm Branch and the very significant portions where there's floodplain, riparian buffers, and other conservation buffers that our UDO applies. But as I noted, this southern area of the site is generally reserved for tree preservation and some portions of public greenway. There were no cultural resources identified on the site. For neighborhood meetings, there were 115 properties and occupants notified. Their first meeting, this was back when we were still doing virtual options or virtual only during the height of COVID. So their first meeting was held on November 22nd of 2021 and a second meeting in December 28. They recently did have another virtual meeting just to follow up to see if there was any additional questions or concerns since it had been some time. There were 12 attendees at that first meeting, 4 at the second, and they had 1 actually at their virtual call-in. In terms of the review framework, again, we've gone over the activity center map. We do have the typology map, which here is very much squarely in the neighborhood typology. So we are looking for this to be primarily a residential proposal, no matter what comes before us. And it's a level 2 area to strengthen. It's not an area that we're looking for a whole lot of change. It should blend in very well with what surrounds it. And focus on, like you say, strengthening what is already there, not radically changing or transforming. So we looked at the framework consistency and identified 14 growth framework criteria. You see the breakdown there. Again, we talked about a lack of a playground open space feature. The applicant acknowledged that. I would expect that we will get something formalized around that prior to this coming back to you. And we did just want to note that, again, when it comes to this, you have to look at all 3 maps together, right? So part of the site is within a neighborhood activity center. So that might suggest that higher densities are more appropriate, probably not real high, but something a little bit higher. But then when you do look at the development intensity map, you see that it's only a category 2. So again, you kind of have to temper and balance those things as to how they work together. So that does kind of lower the expectation. In terms of land use and community character consistency, we looked at 30 criteria and came up with a fairly divided outcome. Again, we could look at things that enhance street frontages, using those open spaces to create more of a focal point. Rather than being so much on the edges, can we bring something a little more centralized? And providing stronger connection between those open spaces and the public realm. So again, those are things that we will be continuing to talk to the applicant about to see if we can swing things a little further towards the consistency side. Again, this is the oldest plan set that is in our pipeline. We did note that there is fairly strong support here for framework consistency. And it does introduce that new housing type that can target the working class. But then again, it is kind of in an area where there's not a lot of opportunity for connectivity yet. It does fill in a little bit, but there's still significant gaps that do remain, and will mean that the area will still be mostly reliant on vehicle travel. So at the public hearing on March 5, there were questions again about the negotiations with the Porterhouse, which was the intervening house there along the Wilmington Future Path. Just some clarifications about the neighborhood meetings, some additional time needed for some of these things to be worked out, and also for the council to consider some traffic concerns along the Creech Road corridor. So we do have a draft motion at the request of council to have more time to evaluate some information that was provided to them by the engineering department and associated staff. So we do have this recommended approval that you move to continue this case to your regular meeting of June 10th to allow for that feedback to be received from council and staff regarding those improvements that were presented to the council in the engineering memo that they received at the public hearing. So next steps are pretty much just what I said there. Eventually we will get to the point of y'all making a statement about the consistency and a recommendation, and eventually going back to council for a final decision. So Allison Jones is here with me tonight. She's been reviewing the subdivision plans. And then I stepped in when Ashley went out on maternity leave to handle this zoning compliance part, and Aaron's been assisting with me as well. So all three of us are here to answer any questions that you may have about this project going into the next month of discussions with the applicant. The applicant is here as well and can answer any questions that you may have preliminarily. But otherwise, we will plan to come back to you in June with a more refined and finalized analysis and recommendation for you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff?
I got a couple questions or comments, Jeff. The site detail I find is very lacking. We got a lot of small little thumbnails. We have this one sketch here, but I don't see how this ties into Wilmington Road realignment, potentially Creech Road. I know that's just off to the side of the Garner North Gateway project, and I believe at one of those hearings they said there would not be a connection across those wetlands, but they're kind of zooming in on this one plot, and you can't really see how this is all going to tie together. I know in Hunter's Mark, you have that road, I guess it would be, well, probably on plan view, it would be south here. It runs parallel with Pasadena, but there's nothing on it. And I think the intent at one time was for that to go over to Creech Road and then also tie in up over the hill to Wilmington where those townhomes are being built. I'd like to see a plan on how this is all going to tie together, because we're kind of zooming in on one small section, and I can't visualize how all this realignment is going to work and how this is either positive or negative or irrelevant for the Gateway project. I know that's still under discussion and development as well. I'm concerned about the Creech Road traffic. There's a lot of projects that seem to be going on out there, and you mentioned that this was under the threshold for a TIA. With all of the development that's going on, including the recent ones that were just approved, and the intersection of Creech and Garner Road, I think there's some things that may be in development, but we're building and building and building, and we're trying to run it through a two-lane intersection, and I just don't see how these thousands and thousands of vehicles are going to go safely in that area of Garner. So that's another concern maybe when it comes back next month. As I understand it, there's no plan or no possibility as it stands right now for a connection to Hunter's Mark. They're gonna do the fee and get halfway, and that's where they're gonna stop until some point in the future, correct? Okay. I would like to, again, see more site detail, some park area. I don't see out of these 110 properties, there's no dog park areas. I don't see any trails noted. Again, just more detail, I guess, when it comes back next month perhaps. And there was a comment in one of the slides about this housing type, the zero lot housing type, possibly being suitable for working class, and I can't make that leap. I mean, how is shifting your dwelling to one side of your lot going to be geared towards a working class person? I don't know how you leap to that point.
So it's a smaller product type. It doesn't have a huge footprint. It quite often will gain a little bit more in terms of a third floor. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Just like any housing product, it can serve any kind of price point. But it is one that can be, just because it is a smaller footprint, and may or may not have the garage with it in the smaller lot. Don't have that land cost put in there. So it's something that you can get a smaller lot, but still preserve a little more elbow room between units, so they don't necessarily feel like they're all right on top of each other by shifting them to the one side. But yeah, just like in our comp plan, it says townhomes, row houses, all those things can. Will they? It depends on the market, but they are a different product between large lot, single family, and apartments. And it's kind of that, I don't want to use the one term, but the small scale is a smaller scale residential format.
I think if maybe there can be a example image or images in our next packet would be helpful. Doesn't have to be the proposed necessarily, but if there's some sort of
Sure.
been done before somewhere else.
Yeah, there's projects like up in Bedford, in Raleigh, that there's some of those that have more of a Charleston style feel, but then there's others that are a little more farmhouse style. And the applicant has provided us some renderings that are a little more of a modern take on it. And Allison's going to try and bring those up so that we might be able to show those to you. But we can also put them in the packet for next time as well. Oh, they are in your packet. Thank you.
Sorry, I was getting my cases confused. So are those the townhomes or are those the zero lot lines?
These are the townhomes.
Okay.
And Allison, if you'll scroll down, there's another view there, and the last pages. So there's an example, and another. And you can't see the side property line, but essentially one side of the building sits right on the side property line. And so the space that you see between the buildings all belongs to the one homeowner. So they get a bigger usable space.
I think to Mr. Carson's point earlier, if you could create a map that's similar to what was shown for the Burnett Farms, and that shows a little bit more of the context of what's been approved, what's in process, what's, even with the other case we're looking at, that how that all, so you can kind of see how it all plays together. Would be helpful. Other questions?
Yep. It says 55-0 lot line, single-family detached homes and 61 townhouses, which if my math is correct is 116 units. Back at the neighborhood meetings in 2021, it said 146 was the answer to that question both times. So what changed?
Yeah, so originally it was, I believe, all townhouses.
Yes.
And Chuck, you might be able to, the applicant could probably provide a quick summary of
I can fill in a
that.
few gaps for you.
A reminder, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Chuck Walker. I'm with Entitlement Preservation Group, 275 North Pea Ridge Road in Pittsboro, North Carolina, 27312. Appreciate the staff for dealing with this project that's moving at the glacial pace that it is. The reason why the numbers are what they are in that original thing was when the project was first brought in, it was first brought in as an entire townhome project. And it has evolved over the years. So that's, as you stated right now, the 116 units is the current number of the mixture of the homes, the single-family homes and the townhomes. These homes here, just I'll answer any questions you have, but I just want to say these homes are all going to be alley loaded. They have the option of having parking pads with a garage or a double garage in the back. So that is one of the options, one of the architectural options that are actually listed in the case. As far as the open space goes, in the graphic that we had, there are 3 places that are open play areas for lawn for people to play in, and then there also is a commitment for pergolas and shelters in each one of those 3 places. We will show a better graphic. We show better. We are having to build part of the greenway on our property that runs through to the south. We will also show private connections from the project into the greenway. The thing that's holding that we're wrestling with now with the town and the staff is the transportation issues on Creech Road. Mr. Carson, you mentioned trying to get a better idea of what's going on with the Wilmington Road extension. The Wilmington Road extension and the Creech Road realignment are both on the town's comprehensive transportation plans. What we are proposing to do and have proposed to do is to build Wilmington Road through the project, and then the Big Arm branch is requiring a bridge. And we have done two bridge designs, not just calculations, but actual bridge designs, and had them priced out. And we have committed to the town to writing a check for $1.6 million for our share of the bridge to be used in the transportation area. So we are doing everything that we can in that area. As staff had mentioned before, we do have a connection to the Gatewood neighborhood, so that would allow somebody to come from the back part of Gatewood to get onto Creech in a different location other than the main entrance, which we're told isn't the best connection to do. And then ultimately when Wilmington is built to the south, and that will be another connection there. In Hunter's Mark, there's a street stub that's in the neighborhood that would grow up to be Wilmington someday. There's a stormwater device right next to it, and it's just pointing to the north. That's the connection point for the Wilmington as it goes through our project.
Is it with the townhome project that was approved last year? I think it was 73 units near the cemetery or around the cemetery. They're taking the water line and connecting it over into Hunter's Mark, but they're not actually making that little connection. So again, we're kind of piecemealing it. You're going to connect to that road that runs parallel to Pasadena, which is by the stormwater pond. Then you come up the hill, and then it's just going to stop again. And then you're going to have another section of road. And again, I'd like to see, all I'm asking for, I just want to see how this is all going to tie together, because all these little piecemeal
They're little baby
construction
steps.
projects.
They're little baby steps.
Yes.
And we're doing all we can from our boundary line to our boundary line to fulfill what the transportation plan calls for.
I have a question for staff, perhaps. if this project went forward and they connect to that stub that's in Hunter's Mark,
Would not.
pardon me?
We would
You're just
not.
doing you're just doing the fee?
We're building
The bridge.
Wilmington, but we're paying for half of the bridge. So the other half of the bridge is on the Hunter's Mark property. So we will not be making
Oh,
that connection.
okay, sorry, that's the wrong area, okay. Well, again, just, I'd like to see an overview of how this ties
Understand.
together.
Understand.
And I do have one other question. Are these two renderings what you're proposing in some portion of
They're
this?
showing the size and the scale of the units of the buildings. So we have certain architectural detailings in the conditions. It's like, for example, in the townhomes, we're committing to a watermark and breaking the units at a certain number. So there are some architectural details. Those are architectural renderings of ideas from our side of the table to show the size and shape of the building. We're not committing to those right now because I can tell on the look on your face you're not really happy with those.
They're architecturally insignificant. No, they're a big box. And personally, I don't find anything at all appealing about them. Now, when you have the offsets and you have some of the other features that you have in the townhomes, again, a little bit more modern. Those two in particular, I'm not supposed to be sold on that, but that's way down the road.
Well, I've had to, luckily, I've had the experience, just as somewhere in this meeting, the name of Bedford was given out. I designed Bedford. So there are a myriad of architectural ways you can design these to look like Charleston homes with double porches and doing a more architectural detailing. If any of you are familiar with the Alexander Place Shopping Center on Glenwood Avenue that has the Walmart in it on the back side on ACC Boulevard, there are also some of these homes. They're more moderately priced, but they're kind of sort of in that direction. They're very linear, but they do have, some of them do have double porches. So any information that you can give us, we will absolutely take in.
Thank you.
I will just caution my commission members that we have to be careful about what we can request for and ask for architectural conditions per state statute. So just want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind, that we have limited ability to require.
Jeff, I'm never one to argue to having fewer stormwater control mechanisms, but it's only 116 units. Is there a reason for 3 ponds?
The topography of the creek.
Okay.
We can't get one to drain into the other, the varying heights
Okay.
of the areas
Okay.
are causing that.
All right. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
If you would like, since this will have some bearing on this case and the next one both, Mr. Hodges has offered to kind of preview and go over to give you some context on what the council received in that engineering memo and how it I think it would answer some of Mr. Carson's questions in terms of what they're looking at, because they have looked at all of the projects that are going on in the area and trying to determine what might be the best solution for right now, given what's being proposed. There's lots of options in the transportation plan. Each one can do slightly different things. One project alone is not going to solve everything. But if you would like to hear a little bit more about that, he has offered to come up and say a little bit about that.
Would that be part of this case, or should we close this case out and then?
It can be both. It's for both. So,
Motion after Mr. Hodges speaks.
okay.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening, Commission members. Give me just a moment. Let us get agenda up for you. No. When these cases were presented to council on April 16th, they included a memorandum from our engineering department that, at the council's request, that talked about some of the challenges that were being foreseen with the Creech Road corridor and surrounding developments. And we will send you this memo tomorrow or tonight so that you have it to reference. Part of the reason for referring this to you tonight and then asking you to hold it open is that council is going to continue some discussions around this information at their meeting on May 21st. And they're going to have some additional information from staff that staff is developing now. And so then that was going to all be forwarded to you for your consideration in June. But since the questions have come up tonight, I just wanted to preview and sort of to get to Mr. Carson's question specifically. This map, Creech Road is highlighted in green here. Wilmington Road is over here in orange. Just to give you some perspective, the project you just heard about is at the top in purple called Wilmington Place. The next case you hear, 1306 Creech Road, are here in the middle. And so when council started looking at some of the proposed projects all together, you see a number of other projects that are in some state of approval. They've been approved in the past, some of them a very long time ago and may not ever come forward, some of them more recently, but council started looking at the aggregate of all of these projects and how some improvements might be made. So I just wanted to start with the map just to show you that there's some discussions about how Creech could be realigned. As Mr. Triesenberg mentioned, if Wilmington were to ever connect beyond the boundaries of the project we just talked about, it could connect over by the edge of Hunter's Mark and then continue down to Jones Sausage Road, which is the improvement you see here. As has previously been mentioned, the crossing of that creek there, the development you just heard would contribute towards half of that crossing, but there's no funding for the other half because it was developed prior to the fee and lieu process that we have. So funding would have to be found to build the rest of that crossing. Also, the rest of Wilmington Road is in different stages of improvement, and some of it is not planning to be improved by development, so there's additional work that would have to be done to Wilmington Road. There's also some opportunities for some east-west connectivity. There's a street off of Creech that terminates called Cook Street. On our transportation plan, that shows connecting all the way over to Wilmington. There's another street called Jewel that is on our transportation plan to potentially connect over to Wilmington as well. So, but both of those improvements to Creech Road, improvements to Creech Road realignment as it heads north, and then improvements to Wilmington Road are all make up 5 different opportunities for improvements in the general area that council feels like and staff feels like could have some impact on the growth of traffic growth in the area. So we will forward you this memo. The memo will outline in a few pages here each of those options. It'll detail some of the proposed development that has been approved or being considered. It will also talk about each of those 5 improvements that I just mentioned very briefly, and then the map at the end will let you visualize sort of where those are. So again, we'll send this to you electronically, but again, part of the reason for continuing these cases tonight is that council is going to receive an updated version of this with some more information on the 21st. They will then have discussion, deliberation, and then staff will be directed as to what additional information we can provide back to Planning Commission before you make your final decisions on these cases. Does that help, Mr. Chair, everyone else?
Yes, works
at
for me.
all? Okay, Any questions I can answer for that? I know that was a very quick overview, but any questions that might help you in your continued discussion tonight?
Good.
All right, well, I'm going to leave this map so that we can get to it if something else were to come up during the night and it be needed. And I'm here for any questions if they come up as well.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to continue this meeting, or this case? Sorry.
I'll make the motion to continue it to the next meeting of the Planning Commission in June.
I'll second.
All right, the motion is on the floor to continue to the June 10th meeting. And I will call the vote. Gina Avent.
Aye.
John Blasco.
Aye.
Ralph Carson.
Aye.
Jehan Hodges.
Aye.
Sherry Phillips.
Aye.
Michael Boyland.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. The motion carries.
All right, next up, similar case, CZMP 2213, 1306 Creech Road. We'll take the same approach. Staff presentation, possibly applicant discussion, and then questions, and then we'll close it.
Good evening, commissioners and public. I'll present the staff report for CZMP 2213. Thank you. So this is a Tier 2 request rezoning. The applicant CR 1306 and O LLC. The request is to rezone approximately 42.02 acres from rural agriculture to multifamily B conditional as well as commercial mixed use. Conditional. The request consists of 312 multifamily units and 5,000 square feet of commercial space. The applicant has offered zoning conditions restricting the range of permitted uses and adding commitments above and beyond the requirements of the UDO. So in context, again, the site is zoned rural agriculture. Rural agriculture is predominantly rural residential, typically larger lots. Agriculture, silviculture, typically found in areas outside of the town's corporate limits, where public water and sewer services are not readily available. Current uses are single-family detached and forestry, which are permitted in that zoning district. A mix of R4, R2, RA, and MFA surrounds the site. As you can see here, you have R4, R4 conditional, and then you have some RA as well as the MFA conditional. Water and sewer are readily available, and the project only fronts one continuous street, Creech Road. Other frontages include Jewel Street, which is eventually planned to extend east to Wilmington Road, and there are also 3 unnamed paper streets within the vicinity. You have one here. This is Jewel right here. So looking at this from our newly adopted comprehensive land use plan, the framework, this site does sit outside of an activity center, but you do have the neighborhood activity center to the north of the site, which is at Creech Road and the future Tryon Road. And you also have a neighborhood activity center to the south, closer to our downtown. Creech Road is a collector road. It's servicing local residents and connecting traffic between these two activity centers. And traffic on Creech Road, which is further being discussed right now, but it has experienced a slow upward trajectory since 2015. Creech Road shows that it does have the capacity to accommodate growth, but it does lack separate infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. Within this proposal, the applicant has chosen the multifamily B district conditional and has narrowed the uses to 2 out of 18 possible uses. Structures within this district tend to be more urban in character and are located closer to the street versus our MFA district with parking generally in the rear. These multifamily developments generally are clustered around active areas and allow people to live closer to places where they work and play. Some non-residential or mixed use structures also may occur within that district. They also are proposing commercial mixed use conditional and have narrowed the possible uses of 59 to 3, limited to 3, and with a focus on complementary non-residential uses, since the MFB currently does not permit, sorry for that drop off of the word, but it doesn't permit any commercial office residential in that district. The proposal has proffered other conditions as far as amenities and aesthetics. They have included a clubhouse, a swimming pool with a cabana and a sun deck, dog park, walking trails. They have included valet garbage and recycling services, upgraded fencing, and warm season grass and native plant material commitments, as well as a 12-inch minimum roof overhangs. This is the master plan, gives you an idea of the layout that they are proposing. You'll see, so at the tip here, that they have the 5,000 square feet commercial space. They have included a connection to the proposed sidewalk to allow that public realm to enter the site from that sidewalk and into the site. They also have added, made the playground a more prominent feature and relocated the dog park area and have included the playground and open play area closer to the clubhouse. They also made a connection here down to a step down to the public greenway. So those are some of the revisions that they have made since appearing at the public hearing the first time and versus the second time on April 16th. And just to review, the site contains 40.05 acres. They are proposing those acres to be MFB, 312 multifamily dwelling units. Of that 312, 24 would be townhomes, and the remaining 288 would be apartments. 1.15 acres has been reserved for 5,000 square feet of office commercial flex space. So that's why you have that CMX conditional as well. They have included 4.2 acres of open space, which is required, and 25% must be active of that 4.2 acres. They have a combination of conservation and recreation space. There are ample wetlands, floodplains, and conservation buffer areas to the site. And again, the recreation, clubhouse, pool, dog run, formal lawn, informal play areas, commercial entry plaza, and private trails have all been included. This site is not in a watershed protection area. It is subject to water quality, nitrogen, and quantity requirements. They have included 2 surface stormwater control measures, an underground stormwater control measure in the commercial area. This site does connect to a 12-inch water main in Creech Road, which you'll see here, and then a connection to an 18-inch fall along Little Branch. You have there. So regarding the transportation, a TIA, traffic impact analysis, was conducted. It was first initially done in November of 2022, and then it was updated in November of 2023. So it is showing that 1,566 new one-way average daily trips will be generated from this project. AM peak hour, 41 trips in, 97 trips out. The congestion management unit from NCDOT requirements included dedicated left and right turn lanes on Creech Road at the main project entrance, and a dedicated left and right turn on Creech Road at Jewel Street. Turn lanes preserve carrying capacity on Creech Road. No changes at East Garner and Creech, and no changes at Sanderford and Creech have been proposed or recommended from congestion management. There are significant floodway and floodplain conservation buffers, as you can see in blue and green on the site. There are opportunities to utilize those areas for trails, public greenway, and tree preservation. Approximately 0.3 to 0.04 miles of public greenway are to be added, and there are no cultural resources that have been identified. So the applicant conducted 3 neighborhood meetings or community meetings, reached out to 135 properties, and occupants were notified for the meeting. The first on June 6th in 2022, and then 2 in 2023, one at June 27th, and the third at on November 8th. The non-residential component was added after the initial staff review. So it increased the scope, so an additional meeting was required, and that's why you have that third meeting. And you do have the full neighborhood meeting report and attached to your staff report. So the public hearing was continued to April 16th, and the comments and questions stemming from that public hearing included clarification of whether single-family detached was considered, questioning the build-out time for the project, the lack of pedestrian connections to destinations that are nearby, and Mr. Hodges spoke to the engineering memo and the theoretical capacity versus actual capacity in the moment, commenting on the lack of public opportunities at the closure of the public hearing, and lack of guarantees for the community benefits at this time. So those just So upon reviewing this, for consistency with the comprehensive land use plan, there were 16 growth framework criteria that were evaluated. 12 were strongly consistent, 2 were modestly consistent, there was 1 split, no modestly inconsistent, and 1 strong inconsistency, and that stems from the CMX zoning district that's not typically associated with the neighborhood typology, but it has been conditioned down appropriately to complement the site and the area. The excuse me, The land use and community character consistency, 26 criteria were determined applicable or possible to meaningfully address. Slight lean towards consistency at this time. Staff does believe that with minor changes and additional details, then the pendulum could swing towards a stronger consistency. So addressing more of the architectural themes, enhancing street frontages, and integrating more with the public streets and public greenway, which notably they did make some minor adjustments. So overall, again, with some continued fine tuning and public input, staff feels that could support an overall finding of consistency. You do have that full detail of consistency in your staff report. At this time, as we stated, this is one of the cases that we would like to keep open and continue to our June 10th meeting. So we do not have a draft consistency or options for a consistency recommendation. And we have drafted a motion to continue the meeting pending feedback from council and staff regarding the improvements presented to council in the reference engineering memo. And as been stated, the applicant is here and can answer any questions, and they have a presentation as well that they would like to present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff? All right. Hear from the applicant? Yeah, we'll hear from.
Good evening. My name is Isabel Maddox, PO 3700 Glenwood, Suite 500, Raleigh 27612. We're happy to do our presentation. We were told by Mr. Hodges and Triesenberg that what we would do tonight was have staff presentation, allow y'all to ask questions, and we could answer questions. But we're happy to do the presentation if you want.
I'll leave it up to you. We could wait. We can do it now. We can wait till June. I think we're amenable to.
Well, you know, again, I think we're interested in hearing what comes out of the council meeting about transportation issues. I mean, they're really big issues for this particular development. So rather than give you something, we have committed generally that we're going to put a strong condition on transportation in there, but we haven't, you know, specifically done that yet because we want to get some feedback from that meeting on May 21st next week. So I think that'd probably be our preference. And if Mr. Triesenberg or Mr. Hodges thinks otherwise, I mean, let us know.
Well, I was just going to say if they wanted to provide any feedback.
Yeah.
That we should think about between now.
Yeah. If y'all have any feedback for us, that would be great. We felt like we had addressed the comprehensive plan issues pretty well from the prior staff report, and some of that was reflected in the staff presentation, but not all of it. So I think we feel like we're there on consistency, but we know we have a lot of work to do on conditions to put some words with some of the things we've agreed generally to do.
Okay. Yeah, that works for us.
Okay.
I'll open it up to commission.
Just one question. On page 7 on the FEMA plan, you show the whole site, but everything on plan east of the wetlands, is that not going to be developed? You're just doing this section on plan west, I guess, of...
That's right. I'm going to call my engineer to speak specifically to that, but yes, I think generally that's right.
Good evening, Beth Blackman, Timmons Group. So yes, we are not crossing the wetlands, not crossing the floodplain, not crossing the conservation buffer. There is a strip of land on the other side that would be usable. Originally, we had that labeled all as tree preservation area. In one of our reviews, staff asked us to sort of tighten the tree preservation area up and not count that area as tree preservation in case in the future when the other property that's on the other side ever developed, it could maybe be combined with it, with a rezoning, you know, because would be required. So we're not going to call that area tree preservation, but we are not touching it.
We are doing some greenways in there.
No, the greenway is all on our side of the creek. So, yeah, so there's really no touching on the other side of the creek. The closest we get is the greenway that goes all the way down, connects up where the sewer easement, existing sewer is, and then goes towards Hunter's Mark. But that's still basically all on our side of the creek.
I had a question. I'm not sure if we know this, but from Jewel Road to the, I guess, entering the development to the end over, like, I guess, where the dog run, do we know how long, what that distance is? So from like the
So are you
north
talking-
to south, yeah, thank you.
You're talking about, yeah, so the way this plan right now is shown, this is north is to the right. So you're saying from Jewel all the way across, like how long that is?
Yep.
I probably knew it at one time, but I don't know it right off the top of my head. I do know we worked with Fire on one of our previous versions before we had the connection to Jewel to have an emergency access up near the existing apartments because of how long it was, but now we looped the road, so that was no longer needed. But I can't remember what the
Are you
measurement
talking about our frontage on Jewel or
No,
the?
she's
No, the
talking
actual.
about from, if you look, do you have the pointer thingy from
It's about a third of a mile from Jewel Street up to the dog park.
Jewel all the way
Okay,
up to the
I
dog
got
park,
you.
just how long that is?
Yeah. Gotcha.
Thank you. That's gonna bring in some other questions probably next meeting then, or some other points, but.
Is there something that you're,
I'm just wondering, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty long distance from some of these apartments to access, so like, for example, the dog run or the commercial space. So that just, me a third of a mile, I would walk it, but I don't know that everybody would. And just seems a little disconnected, some parts for it to be that far
I
apart.
think we had moved the dog park.
We made the playground centrally located and the dog park less centrally located, since the playground was a prime focus in the Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan. So that's where that switched. Now, obviously, the commercial is located where it is so that it has road frontage on Creech, and that is our only significant road frontage. So that was the only place to put that.
Then I'm looking at, I guess the trash is over near the corner where the commercial, that's the only trash reciprocal.
Yes,
There,
but
okay.
and that would be considered more centrally located, but also out of the way. And that is, but one of our zoning commitments is for valet trash. So staff is less concerned about the trash location since that would be an amenity or perk for the residents, you know, obviously within certain hours of the day.
I don't know if I missed it, but those townhomes, were those intended to be rentals or those owner occupied?
I don't think it's clear how they'll be owned. At this point, you know, they can be either.
But it's not part of the same rental group as the apartments?
Well, they're all being developed by the same developer at this point. I mean,
Gotcha.
that's the plan.
Well, sure. Okay. Further questions?
I'm in agreement with what Ms. Hodges was getting at, is you've got the clubhouse, then you've got open space, then you've got the playground. I was just kind of thinking along the same lines as the dog park could be in the playground area and move the playground closer to the clubhouse. I mean, if your clubhouse and your pool and everything's there, it would seem that would be where you'd probably also want to take your dog for the dog run.
Can you flip forward? There's a zoomed in picture of, on one of these slides, just to maybe answer, I cannot remember where, so keep going. Okay, there. So the playground is to the left of the clubhouse with that open lawn area. The playground designation area used to be the dog park designation, and there was not a playground. So adding the playground was one of the things that we did to be more in conformance with the Garner Ford comprehensive plan. And so we relocated the dog park, which is an amenity, but, you know, not as prominent of a thing in the comprehensive plan, nor some people, you know, like dogs, some people don't like dogs. So that was a little bit easier to shift to the side, whereas you didn't want to put the playground over to the side. And then obviously you have the greenway with 3 connections to it now, I do believe. So you have a really nice walking loop if you did have a dog, make that loop. And then you could always stop by the dog park as well, which is near one of the trail accesses.
So just to the right of the pool, I don't know what that heavy black line is, if that's a fence or something, but,
That is a retaining wall.
oh, okay.
And so that greenway connection that is added there would be stairway greenway connection. But the Mr. Triesenberg told us that was fine because we would have other ones that would not be.
More accessible.
Can you flip back to the overall plan? I guess just kind of go, you know, things I'm going to be thinking about over the next month is, you know, is the mix of density appropriate? First glance, it looks like the 4 townhome units, if they're not rentals, it seems kind of an odd mix with the apartments, which are going to all be rentals, I'm assuming. So is that the right density mix for this neighborhood? Is it the right product mix? You know, maybe if it's meant to be a little bit more of a mix, there's a bit more of a integrated townhome apartment, but, or maybe it's all rentals. I don't know what the answer is, but just something to.
We are talking with our client about, you know, looking at some different product types, but, you know, this is where, I think that wasn't their original plan to put the townhouses up front and then they got moved.
Yes, originally the townhouses were behind the existing single family as part of a transition. The reason that was changed was the grading challenges to transition from Creech down is quite a significant change. And so putting those townhome units in an area where they would be overlooking the pond sort of made them kind of have their own little amenity area, at least a view aspect of things. But it allowed us to step the middle of the site. And so the buildings in the middle would all be 3-4 or 4-5 splits. And it allowed us to take the parking off of the planned north-south roads to allow for steeper grades in between the buildings. And so that's why we kind of switched things around, looking at the topography of the existing site. And so we kept the townhomes because we had townhomes before, kind of have that mix. But originally they were considered as a transition. Now we're using the perimeter buffer parking lot before you get to a building. So you would still have kind of the transition in the space at least.
I have a question.
In previous, we haven't updated the site section exhibit, so I didn't include it in this presentation. But Creech to the existing homes, the roof of the apartment buildings is lower than the roof of the existing homes on Creech because of how much drop there is.
Down.
I have a question. For this layout, with so many apartment units, is there a particular reason why you chose to even include these 24 townhomes? Why didn't you just make it all apartments?
You know, I'm not sure. I wish our developer representative was here tonight. But I think they would just want to do a mix of types, of housing types. But I can't tell you much more than that. And I'll get that information, though, for the next meeting. And the representative because we told them that this was going to be just automatically bumped till the next meeting, that's why they didn't, they're from out of town and didn't come for this meeting. So we'll get that, though, get that
Okay.
answer.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Do we have a motion to continue this to June?
Motion. I move that the Planning Commission continue its review of case CZMP 22-13 to the regular meeting of June 10th to allow for the feedback to be received from the council and staff regarding the improvements presented to the council in the referenced engineering memo.
Second.
The motion is on the floor. I'll call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
John Blasco, Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Jehan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips, Michael Voyland.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. The motion to continue carries.
Thank you. I would encourage the members of the public to tune in to the May 21st council session to hear additional information, which I think will help our conversations. So thank you. Moving on, planning director reports.
Yes. First of all, good questions on the projects tonight, and we will continue to work on revising our staff reports in a way that maybe we can give you a little more context in some cases. Sometimes that's a challenge to fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, but we will certainly do what we can to keep improving our new format. In terms of council actions since the last Planning Commission, the pedestrian plan has been adopted, so that is now officially on the books. The Burnett Farms had to come back for a special use permit approval for the apartment portion of their project. So again, that was right next to the Wall Store Road property tonight, and that was approved. And then 312 US Highway 70, that was the project Miss Tracy Dusenberry to pursue the low-income housing tax credit possibility at that location. She now has her approval for that rezoning as well. So her next steps are to meet some deadlines with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency and see how her proposal scores in comparison to others in the region and state for funding. And we'll look to hear more from her later in the year. But thanks to y'all for your efforts in reviewing that, and the zoning has been approved. Finally, the ETJ request that council requested and was identified as the top priority of the comprehensive plan. We did present that to the council at their last meeting and received their endorsement to forward that report and overall package request to the Wake County Board of Commissioners, courtesy of the Wake County Planning Department staff. So we hope to have that actually submitted and delivered to them later this week. So what that means is could be anywhere from 4 to 6 months, hopefully no more than that, but it could be longer, to get through the Wake County portion of the review for that request. They have 3 different groups that take a look at that and provide input. But once, if we were to receive approval from the Board of Commissioners, I think as I noted last time, that will then come back into our court for actions to actually extend the ETJ and then to consider rezoning for all of the property in the ETJ. Because currently it's all zoned by Wake County, and we would need to give everybody a designation from the town of Garner. In terms of appointments of new members, we have an update from the council. They have given appointments to 2 new members to replace Mr. Blasco, who is rotating off, and to fill Miss Avents position. Their names are Mariah Bishop and Shane Banks. So we are working with them. Hopefully they will be able to attend your meeting in June and hopefully then be positioned to take their seats in July for a 2-year appointment. And Thomas was checking with them, I think, and we've got them signed up for the training that will take place later this month. And again, just a reminder, that will be on May 30th from 1 to 4:30 p.m. Certainly thank you for getting back to Thomas with your availability, and for those of you who are able to attend. And I really already gave my ETJ update, so I think I've covered what I had planned to cover with you all tonight, unless you have questions.
Questions?
I have an observation. I think this is the first time ever that I've seen 3 proposals that we are considering in one way or another having a lot to do with stretches of roadway that are either non-existent, unpaved, or unfinished. Wall Store Road, Jewel Street, and Wilmington Road. And I just want to say, I think it's a testament to how fast Garner is growing out into its hinterland. It just struck me that way, and I thought I'd share that.
Yes. Lots of challenges with roadways for sure. Parts of town that, when you think about it, the Creech Road corridor really isn't that far from town. But it's an area that hasn't seen a lot of development. So yeah, we're trying to merge now that the real estate market seems to have ripened for the area, how to merge current proposals with development patterns that started long ago in the 50s, if not before. And the longer that time goes by, the greater the challenge can be to make those come together in a way that makes sense and works for everybody, because a lot's changed in that amount of time. You think about just what's changed in the last 20 years, and then you go back and look at 70 years. That's a big gap.
I heard recently somewhere that we're on pace to be 75,000 plus residents within a short amount of time. Well, maybe.
Yeah. Depends on the pace of things, but we have been producing again our population estimates on a monthly basis. Sometime this summer, we do estimate we will cross the 40,000 threshold.
Yeah, I think it was like in the next 10 or 15 years, it could be 75,000. I think that's the number. I could be wrong, but either way, much different than the 18 or 20,000 that was here when I moved to Garner 18 years ago or whatever it was. So it's a lot in a short amount of time.
I think it was the news release about Holly Springs wanting to get a new post office. It said something about their population in 1991 was 900 people, and it's currently 40-something thousand.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, Morrisville, Holly Springs, both were tiny little dots on the map.
All right, anybody else? All right, with that, I will adjourn us. See you all next month.